What's up, guys? Welcome back to How To Subaru. Today we're going to be showing you how to do head gaskets, or at least part one of the head gaskets. So I'm pulling the motor out of this 98 Forester. You don't necessarily need to do the head gaskets. I think it makes it easier, but I also need to do the oil pan gasket on this, so that is like the only way to get to it. Let's with it out. So what I've done so far is took the alternator out. That allowed me to get to these bolts for the AC compressor. I just undo that and kind of set it over there in the battery tray. Same thing with the power steering. Just get that out of the way. You can leave them hooked up. You don't have to drain them or anything. Just push them out of the way. I took the intake off. Also unplugged the O2 sensor and dropped the headers. So you also need to undo this pitch mount, because we're going to be jacking up the transmission a little bit to get the right angle, because there's two studs on the bottom coming from the engine through the transmission. That is a funky angle, so you have to jack that up to slide it out. And I already undid. There's a nut way down there, which you probably can't see. I undid down there. This one I just left in, but finger tight, so I can undo that. Same thing on the other side. There's the starter comes out. There'll be a long bolt. This bolt actually, that'll hold the starter in, and then there's two nuts on that side, and that's all that bolts up the transmission to the engine. Once you have those out, just make sure. Oh yeah, I left out that I took the radiator out. Just thought it was kind of obvious. That's the first thing I did, just pull the radiator, get that out of the way so you don't mar it up and it's really in the way. Also make sure you have all these electrical connections undone. Brake booster is disconnected, fuel lines, throttle cable. In this case it also has cruise control, so have that disconnected, and we're pretty much ready to go. I don't think I'm forgetting anything. It's not too much. The only thing I left so far is underneath there's two engine mounts. Let's see if I can get those on video. So that's really dark. Yeah, you can't see it. Like right here, there's one like stud that sticks through the frame or cross member with a nut on it, and then same thing on the other side. We'll just undo those and get the hoist out here and pull her out. So here is the engine mount nut right there. There's another one on the other side. So I'm just gonna undo those now. I have it still bolted with one bolt to the transmission, but it's not just gonna fall out of here. So undo those, and I jacked up the transmission just forward of the like cross member for it back there. So yeah, that brace for the transmission, I jacked it up just forward of that. Used a piece of wood so I don't mar it up. You just jack it up a little bit, it'll give you a better angle to get the engine out. So here we go. Alright, so I got the hoist set up here. Got this, I don't know what to call it, it's like a leveling tool. Came with the hoist. Works pretty good to make sure you got the right amount of slack on both sides. Don't want one side yanking up before the other. So I just kind of sling them underneath the heads. And just double check underneath that I'm not like crushing anything that would break, basically. I'll show you underneath. So right in between those studs for the exhaust manifold usually works pretty good. That's where I have it on the other side also. So I'm going to ease it up here, and then once I feel I have good tension on it, I'll undo that last bolt I have in the back there, and as long as everything is disconnected, I didn't miss anything, we should be able to just come right out with it. On the Subarus with the hoist, you gotta like prop your hood up higher than normal, basically straight vertical. So, alright, here we go. Alright guys, so I got the engine out. I didn't get it all on film because the camera ended up dying. But I know I didn't do a great job of covering everything on the removal of the engine, so when I put it back in, I'll try to be a little more detailed so you guys see where everything goes. So far, since I've got it in here, I took off the timing belt cover, which is just a bunch of 10mm bolts, just to check out the belt, which is definitely getting worn. This guide looks like it's rubbing. So we're gonna get a new belt. Heads need to be resurfaced. New head gaskets, possibly new water pump. We'll see. I think I need new idler pulleys too. This one's making a little bit of noise. So yeah, next thing I'm going to do is pull off this intake manifold, which is really just like these 4 mounting bolts, but there's a couple hoses, like the PCV hose. We've got some like coolant ones that go to the throttle body. Not too much, so let's get started. Almost forgot about this EGR port. It's got a copper tube that runs from the intake manifold right into the head here. So I think it's like a 17 mil. Just take those out before you try to rip it off. Alright, so I got the 8 bolts that hold it onto the heads. Couple plugs. There's this one that goes to the cam angle sensor, crank sensor, this is like oil pressure sensor. The harness stays connected to the intake manifold, so you want to disconnect whatever is going to the engine. So there's a bolt right here for this main harness clip that's going to go up with the intake manifold. PCV tube is connected right there. It's easy, just a little hand clamp. There's a coolant line that goes to the throttle body, and then there's another one that's like buried underneath there. You can't really see it in here, but you'll see it when I take it off. And then there is 2 clips underneath that once you lift it up, they'll snag and you'll see them. They're like almost impossible to get to without lifting it up. So I'll show you those as we take it off. Alright, so here's what it looks like when the intake manifold's off. Here's that first coolant hose to the throttle body I showed you, and here's the second one. It curves around like that, so it's really deep in there with all the harnesses. And then the 2 clips are right here. This one's just a blade connector, so that one slides off, but this one you got to fight with a little bit. As you can see, this engine is disgusting, just rat turds everywhere. So I'm gonna get the vacuum out and get all this crap off of there before I work on it. So let's do that. Alright, so I got all the rat poop off. You don't have to take off this upper tube. I just did so I could get underneath it. I also took out the knock sensor back here just because there's rat poop everywhere. Alright, so before you take the heads off, you want to make sure it's set to the neutral position on the timing, which there's a notch, if I can get the light right, back there. Little line on that tooth that lines up with this notch here. So you turn this to the right till that lines up, and then you check to see if these line up. Notch there, notch in the plastic above it, 2 that meet in the middle, sorry about that, and 1 right there. Same thing on this side, notch, 2 that meet in the middle, and 1 right there. If it doesn't line up, turn it around again, because this spins twice for every time those spin, and it'll line up unless your timing's off. So once you get that all lined up, then you're ready to pull the heads off, which right now I'm going to take the valve covers off, and we'll have to take the cams out because this is a dual cam. The head bolts are underneath the camshafts, so a little more work than the single cam, so let's get into it. Alright, so now we're going to get the timing belt off, which all you got to do is take this tensioner off here. I believe it's a 14 mil, and then it'll be loose. I think this side the cam gear will shift over because it's under pressure, but it'll be fine because we have the crank set to the neutral position. So yeah, let's do it. Yeah, that was way looser than it should have been. And if you were going to reuse this tensioner, you'd put a pin or a small pin through the tensioning piston in there to hold it at the right spot. But this one's shot, so we're just going to get a new one. So once you get the tensioner off, it almost comes all the way off unless you have this guide here, which is only on the stick shift designed engines, just because it keeps it from jumping a tooth right there. Take that off and the belt will come free. Now we're going to use this belt to assist us in breaking torque on these cam gears. So this is a trick you can use if you have an old timing belt and you're going to replace it anyway. This belt works great for holding the cam gear steady so you can break torque. Otherwise they sell a special tool from Subaru that you have to spend $1 million on, so here it goes. Just kind of wrap it around, get it as tight as you can, and get some vice grips. Come on. See if that works. It's a little loose. Should hold it. There we go. Now we're going to pull these plastic covers off. To get to this one, you got to take this pulley off. So let's do that first. So to get this plastic cover off, you have to take out this dipstick. It's just one bolt. I had already grabbed it out, but just wanted to clarify. You just take that bolt off and yank it. It's got a little O-ring at the bottom that holds it in. Simple. So now we're gonna get the camshafts out. They have 3 caps. Just go ahead and pop them off. They have a little bit of RTV under them usually, so they might be stubborn. So don't worry about labeling these. They already have a label on them. So here's what it looks like when you have the camshafts out. As you can see, the head bolts are like directly underneath the shaft, so you have to take them out. One thing you do want to label is these bucket shims, just wipe them off with a rag and get a permanent marker and 1, 2, 3, 4, and actually label it like E for exhaust 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I for intake. That way you don't mix them up because they're shimmed to a certain spec, so you want to keep those in the right spot. Now, these are a pain in the butt to get out. You gotta just try to catch them with the edge of your finger and pull up. And once you get a little more, just twist them, pull out. And I like to put everything in a little box and label it D for driver side. The other one will be P for passenger, just so there's no confusion on where it goes. So I'm going to go ahead and pull the spark plugs. I was going to do that earlier, but I forgot about it, and you don't want to wait till the heads are out because it makes it a little difficult if they're really tight in there. So we'll do that now. Alright, now we're going to start cracking loose these head bolts, which they're pretty difficult, they're really tight, so. Alright. Not too bad. Alright, so all the head bolts are out and it's ready to come off. Just like that. So here's the head gasket, which actually looks like it's been changed before. And you can see where it's missing material in between here. That's most likely where it was leaking. It was overheating, and so I'm guessing combustion air was getting into the coolant, which was superheating it, and yeah, no good. So overall it doesn't look too bad though. The head looks pretty healthy. You can see the corresponding marks of where it was most likely leaking. Common issue on the Subarus, so that's why we're doing this. Alright guys, so that's going to wrap it up for part 1 of this video. I'm not going to film the other head coming off because it's exactly the same. So the next step should be, after I get them resurfaced, we'll be putting new head gaskets on. I'll show you how to scrape the block side with a razor, get it all cleaned up, and yeah, thanks for watching. Like and subscribe. See you guys.